Hello, friends, and welcome to Coach Cut's Corner. Streaming bright from Michigan's capital city, this podcast is dedicated to helping you better understand the who, the what, and the why of mental performance, personal growth, and Lansing Stars baseball. Coach Cut's Corner, brought to you by Eyewash.
In collaboration with Lansing Community College.
And now here's your host, Stephen Cutter.
Welcome to Coach Cut's Corner, where we challenge limits, push for greatness, and develop athletes who thrive on and off the field. We've built a program centered on discipline, self-belief, and relentless preparation. Each week, I bring you insights from my coaching journey, conversations with high performers, and lessons that drive winning habits. If you're serious about growth, whether as a player, coach, or leader, you're in the right place. Let's get after it. All right, everyone, welcome back. Today's episode is one I've been looking forward to for quite a while now. We're bringing you behind the curtain of what it takes to build savage athletes, not just physically, but mentally, emotionally, and competitively. Joining me is someone I deeply respect, Donovan Santas. Donovan's resume is heavy. He spent years in Major League Baseball as a strength and conditioning coach with both the New York Yankees and the Toronto Blue Jays. He's been around greatness and knows exactly what separates the ones who make it from the ones who don't. We connected through Pison, a game-changing technology we're using here at Lansing, and Donovan is in town this week learning, observing, and helping us get better. It means a lot to have him here. Also in the studio with me is Coach Jeff Allen. Jeff's in his first season with the Stars, and he's already done some amazing things. He follows my lead, holds guys accountable, and keeps the temperature where it needs to be in the room. So today we're going to cover a lot, what elite athletes do differently, how strength is evolving with tech, and the kind of leadership that makes a team tough to beat. Let's dive in. Donovan, welcome to the studios. Love having you in here. Can you kind of walk us through your journey, how you got started, and what the road to the big leagues looked like for you?
Yeah. So pretty long journey, but I'll give you some timeline spots, and then we can go from wherever you want to go. But athlete in high school, really loved sports. Grew up in a very, very small town in Wisconsin, dairy farm, like everything that you picture or imagine Wisconsin to be. I lived it. Cheese, milk, the whole works. Yeah. Knew I wanted to get out of there. Knew I wanted to be in sports in some way, shape, or fashion. I did not want to be a farmer the rest of my life. No offense, Dad. But that took me to college, where I pursued an exercise sports science degree. And then I was kind of at a crossroads of how I wanted to put that into practice. If I wanted to be, in the fitness industry or, in the sports team world. So I ended up doing an internship at the University of Arizona. Worked with all the team sports out there, and it was a who's who of athletes and just athletic success out there. And that nailed it down for me. I knew at that point I wanted to be in team sports. And moved on to another internship with the Cleveland Indians. Cleveland Indians at the time, Guardians now, and met a bunch of tremendous people, players, coaches, front office, that would go on to continue to be a big part of my journey in my life. From there, I moved on to Toronto to be minor league coordinator, and went from a really well-established program in Cleveland to a big opportunity in Toronto. Walked into something that was really undeveloped, not a lot in place, so it allowed me to step in and kind of put my stamp on the program and grow that. So we grew the staff, we grew the program, everything about it, and opportunities opened up for me to move into the big leagues, the major leagues with Toronto, and I spent 6 years up there. And had an incredible time, worked with incredible coaches and people along that journey, but realized at that time that living life on the road with the big league team was not how I wanted to raise a family. And so I transitioned back to the minor leagues and spent another probably 10 years there, 10 or 12 years in that role, that grew into a director position and so on and so forth. And then from there, it led to an opportunity with the Yankees. Spent 4 years with the Yankees before transitioning out of the game on my own terms, which does not happen a ton in pro sports. So a total of 24 years working in pro sports, and had an opportunity to transition out on my own terms and relocate to the Northeast, where I was reunited with some former athletes of mine from Cleveland, and introduced to Pison, and I'm starting a new journey now.
Love that. That's an awesome story. I was thinking about it when you were talking, and you were mentioning, with Toronto, how you had somewhat of a fresh, clean slate. And thinking back on it now, isn't it crazy with where that whole world is with technology and, with everybody trying to get better and trying to find that edge and where it was at a certain point?
It is. It's incredibly remarkable. And to think about it in those terms, it's, especially from my industry, strength and conditioning or performance, there won't ever be another time like that where I stepped in and there were no sports scientists, there were no mentor performance coaches, there were no nutritionists, there were no, we didn't have a physical therapist at the time. It was literally me and two athletic trainers in the major leagues, at the highest level. And so that'll never exist anywhere in any high level sport anymore. But also, it was just an incredible opportunity for me to be able to experience all of those areas and have a role, a secondary role in all those areas, and then be part of growing them and realizing the value of them, and then promoting the value of those, to the athletes, and understanding the benefits of specialty.
So kind of got a question for you. There's a new Netflix documentary out about the Boston Red Sox, and I think in general people think of professional athletes, even in baseball, being super yoked and enormous, and and in some ways a lot of them are, but in some ways there's, we'll just say, some dad bods. Is that something? Did you find that when you were working at those levels, of those were people that you were trying to help more, and try to dive into how you could spark them a little bit, because we're really talking about performance, but then there's the other line of it. If they are performing, you don't want to screw it up, right?
Yeah, I think ultimately you don't want to make somebody something that they're not. They have strengths, and you want to recognize those strengths, and you want to capitalize on those strengths. There's always going to be areas that they can improve upon, but if going too far down that road is a detriment to their strengths, then you're not helping them as an athlete or as an individual. I recognized that pretty early in my career. Not knowing really anything as I got into the sport. But, when I was with Cleveland, the closer at the time was Bob Wickman. And he probably, if you Google him, he has the all-time dad bod. And he was not in good shape, but he was the closer. And he had lost the tip of his index finger in a lawnmower accident as a kid. And because of that, threw one of the most nastiest sliders, cutters you had ever seen, because he was missing that tip of his finger, and he threw hard. And if the focus for him was on losing 25, 30 pounds and getting in great shape and looking like a football player, the chances are he would have lost a lot of himself along the way, and a lot of his strengths along the way. So it was less about turning him into something he wasn't. It was more about, finding the strengths that he had and capitalizing on them, keeping him healthy, and doing whatever you could to accentuate his career and his strengths along the way.
I think that perspective might change a little bit at the collegiate level, but I know you and I have spoken about this before, even at the professional level. Sometimes those changes need to be made. Maybe they don't have enough strength to endure an entire season, the rigors of the grind. and they need to add, and they just don't want to, and you've got to find ways to help them. And then, of course, there's the other situations where they're performing just fine and able to do it with wherever they're at. So it's kind of trying to find that line of who do I help, who's okay with where they're at. But at the collegiate level, that's a little bit different, and something that we saw when we first came in here was, went and took a look at the last 10 years of national champions at this level, and how big were they? Right. What was their size? And boy, you take that much, a decade of winners, it gives you a pretty good scale of what it looks like. And yes, people are getting bigger and getting stronger with technology and things like that, but it gives you a pretty good scale and tells you, this is probably where team needs to be if it wants to give a chance to win. I kind of wanted to know, what do you think separates the best players you've worked with from the guys who are just decent?
Yeah, you make a really good point about the difference between development and maintenance. And early in my career, I was working at the highest level, and it was more about working with guys that were a bit more of a finished product. They were towards the end of their career. Later after that, I spent a lot of time in the Blue Jays and the Yankees in the development role and developing athletes. And you're right. You come across guys that have elite talent but are not physically developed, and that will unequivocally end in injury or lack of performance, as the season wears on. So yeah, finding the ability to develop them while still improving and competing is not easy. And what I have noticed is the players that do dedicate a substantial amount of time to their physical development, usually in the off season, because that's when they have the biggest opportunity, but then not neglecting the in season as well.
Trying to do enough to maintain, right?
And I saw it a lot, especially early in my career as a strength coach. You would have a lot of players who would would hire a trainer and work hard in the off season to develop themselves physically, but then when the season would come, they would just stop. And it became a bit of a flat line. They kept chasing their median level. During the off season they'd make some gains. During the season they would lose those gains. During the off season they make the gains back. They would lose the gains in season, and they never really truly got ahead. They relied on their talent, and talent, as you go up in levels, equalizes everybody. So the athletes that were really dedicated to their physical development the entire year, 12 months a year, were the ones that really just steadily made more progress over time, and were able to improve and climb through the system the best.
Couple questions for you. One, do you think that applies to high school athletes?
I do, and I see it a lot. It's becoming more and more common now for athletes to be a one sport athlete throughout high school.
Yes, specialized.
And that wasn't the case for me. But even if you have an athlete who's going to play multiple sports, training and lifting and trying to physically develop in season is single-handedly the best thing that you can do for a youth athlete.
It's a cheat code at this point.
It really is. It really is. And then playing multiple sports is always a benefit, because you're going to be a more well-rounded athlete all around. I do deep down believe there is, if you have some talent and you have a good work ethic, you have time to develop. You don't have to be a finished product by the time you're a junior in high school to ultimately end up in the big leagues, Yeah.
Right. I think that with that, there's a lot that goes into the development circle, and there's a piece of that development circle that's leadership. You have to be able to lead when you're in roles like you have, where you have to know when to push and when to pull and when to hug and when to kick, and with the leadership roles that you've had, how have you approached leadership when you're put in these roles that, somewhat are trailblazing, but you do have to educate and you do have to push and you do have to pull. Was that transition tough for you or not really?
I think it's always a bit of a challenge across the board, but I just would approach it the best that I could from the standpoint of meeting the athlete where they are and understanding, their experience level to that point. So there were a lot of times where, we'd have a 4-year college, player come into the organization and he was told he wasn't even allowed to lift in college. There were other kids who came from JUCOs who, trained at performance centers in the off season, had a really good program in place. And there were other high school kids who, could be one way or the other. They could have had a good training session in place where they developed really well, and we just need to fine tune it and tweak a little bit. And other kids who've never touched a weight in their life. And so you can't approach it. You can't approach all of those kids the same way with do this or else. You need to try to find the thing with them that is going to be the most impactful. And so, for a 4-year college kid coming in and, he's pitched at a high level but not been allowed to touch a weight because they didn't want to hurt him, you're going to approach that completely different. You're going to bring him some reassurance of, hey, listen, we can do this without hurting you and still develop you, and you're not going to fall behind, and you're going to be all right. The JUCO kid who trained at a performance center and is already really physically developed and in a great place, you're just going to fine tune it a little bit and be like, hey, listen, now the baseball workload's going to spike here big time, and the intensity is going to go way up. So we need to manage that. We need to work with you on that. We need to check in regularly on how you're feeling, and adjust as necessary. And I think the athlete really appreciates the fact that you want to work with them on that individual level. You want to understand, what they've done to this point, but then also where they're trying to get to. And I probably had, an ace in my back pocket, having been in the big leagues already and seen what big leaguers are and what they do and how they look and how they act. And so, I had that ability to kind of reassure them that, they don't have to throw a shutout tomorrow to be in the big leagues. You know what I mean? This is a long process, and we have time to get there, and we're going to get there together, and we're going to figure this out.
Which sounds great, but it's also a pretty transactional level too. And if you don't do what you are supposed to be doing, a lot of times you're not going to be around very long, and so that creates an enormous amount of pressure. I do want to transition a little bit, and I want to talk about Pison and kind of their performance innovation. You've transitioned from the baseball world into Pison and using all the connections that you have, and that's a big reason why you're here too. But it's kind of where modern data and tech and training is going at this point, and Pison is being used in our program here in Lansing, and it's something that is a incredibly working, fluid environment with how we're using it, because I think that it has some incredible roles with the cognition piece, and it's got its staples of readiness and everything else, and then it also has these unknown roles where we're doing things with caffeine, and we're doing all these different things just to see where things go. And so it's been a pretty exciting time. What do you think initially made you believe in Pison?
I think the thing that caught my attention immediately when I learned about the technology was just the role of cognition in athletic performance. So I spent my entire world in the sports performance sector, physically challenging and working with athletes in every capacity, from force plates and using technology in some cases not. But we were inundated with technology that could train and test the athletes physically. And what I realized early in my career was the role of mental performance. And we didn't have a mental performance coach, but one of the athletes that I worked with very, very closely for the longest time, and he was one of the most successful players that I'd ever been with, was Roy Halladay, and he was an early adopter of the mental performance game and just training, and I saw the impact that it had on him as an athlete, how it kept him steady, while he didn't sacrifice anything physically. He still trained incredibly hard and was always prepared, but he also had that, for lack of a better term, the sixth tool of his mind. Mm-hmm. He was able to regulate that across the board. And so when I found this technology and I saw the opportunity to dive deeper into quantifying, testing, monitoring cognition with athletes, I knew this was an area that I was never able to tap into throughout my journey, and it was definitely something that I wanted to do. It was something that I was presented with in terms of making the information and the data actionable for coaches and athletes. And that's something I've always been passionate about, something that's been always important to me, because numbers without context are worthless. And so I wanted to be part of that, and I wanted to be part of moving this into all areas of sports, not just professional sports, collegiate sports, high level, youth sports, across the board, because everyone can benefit from mental performance.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely agree with that. With Pison and your role, we know, and we talk about it a lot, like on this podcast and stuff, with the value and what we're getting out of having the numbers and how we're able to make more informed decisions and how it can change our normal biases towards certain things that we just think are there, but then you realize, well, that's actually not there. There's a reason why. But how about in your words? Why should college programs be using Pison?
I think it empowers the coach and empowers the athlete to take control of their situation. We can prepare them physically as a staff, as a coaching staff, as a strength staff. We can prepare them for upcoming games, but there is a known unknown out there, and we don't know how they're responding to their life, to their game, to to everything else that they have going on, and we don't know what that response looks like. We don't know how well they're sleeping. We don't know, how much anxiety they have. We don't know, what else is going on. And now we have an ability to look a little bit deeper into that. And then on top of it, we have the ability to empower them to try some interventions and mitigations throughout their day, throughout their life, to change that, to change that positively, and hopefully positively affect their performance on the field, but also their daily life in general.
You say interventions, and my mind immediately goes to jump ropes and ladders, and of course music's one of the bigger ones that we found to make a huge impression. But Jeff, what changes have you seen, like with our guys and Pison? What have you noticed?
I really like the competitive aspect of it. Guys are getting their high scores and they're running around showing the other guys like, you can't beat this, you can't beat this. So that's been pretty cool to see. I've found myself falling into that a couple times. Get a high score on a focus test and be like, look guys, look. So that's been cool. I think one of the especially cool parts is that Phil Collins song. We've been, I'm not going to give it away, but it's a little bit slower paced song. We've pushed
Thankfully, he's got more than one song, but
yeah. Pushed a sled to it. We're doing our Pison test to it, and the other day we were playing and at an away game, and the other team played that Phil Collins song, and you look around, and guys are kind of nodding their head like, oh no, they played our song, they're in trouble now. So that's been pretty cool. It's just really, really cutting edge stuff. I think that there's a lot that guys can learn from it, and it's not even just coming from us. They kind of learn more on their own too. Doesn't have to be just that Phil Collins song. Some guys have certain songs that they feel like they listen to and test higher on, and it's cool to kind of give them that and let them run with it and see what they come up with. But it's been awesome so far. I'm loving it.
Yeah, it also shows how powerful the mind can be for performance. And I know we have a player that tests incredibly at an incredible quick level. And I was just telling a group that he was in the other day about how, like, I'd been doing some manifesting and really locking in on, you know, having a better score than him, and really focused on it. And then I went and I tested, and I had a better score than him, you know, and he was just blown away by it. And they were all like, wow, that's incredible. But in a lot of ways, it's not just a story. It's how powerful the mind can be. Yeah. And, you know, we all shake our heads like, yes, and you're thinking positive, but on the other side, it can be extremely powerful on the negative side. And we've probably all seen the athletes that are affected by not having the tools or the skills to be able to get out of the funk, get out of the slump, to be able to, you know, just be able to stack those bricks and move forward. And it's not because they don't want to, but they don't necessarily know how to. And so the brain is incredibly powerful. I want to give you a few quick hitters and kind of put you on the spot and see what you've got to say about a few things. So what's one non-negotiable that you live by?
One non-negotiable.
Besides that your wife is more famous than you.
Yeah, that is absolute truth. Preparation. Just trying to stay prepared, and trying to stay ready and present the most that I possibly can.
Staying present's a tough one. We teach our players about the floor, be able to feel the carpet right now or the dirt, that kind of stuff. Whether it's in the box, on the rubber, anywhere else, it will help you get prepared because of just that feeling. There's some stuff with grounding too that's built into that, where grounding is a great thing. What do you think, from your years of experience, what do you think defines a savage athlete to you? You know what they are. They're different. What makes that up?
I think it's a beautiful balance of grit and being open-minded.
Favorite professional baseball moment?
Wow, too many to choose from.
Nothing sticks out?
Wow, yeah, I mean, tons. Honestly, watching Roy Halladay pitch 10 shutout against the Yankees, and then talking to him after the game and him saying, yeah, I was going to go out for the 11th. And you're just like,
but where was his pitch count at?
Oh, he was at like 95 pitches through 10.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. Like he was insane. But then, I mean, he would do something close to that every fifth day. So that was crazy. Carlos Delgado, 4 for 4 with 4 homers off 4 different pitchers in
Impressive.
one game.
Yeah.
The last
Impressive.
last one off the windows in Toronto. Frank Thomas's 500 home run.
Oh yeah.
Seeing that in person, and then him thanking me in his Hall of Fame speech. Crazy.
Really?
Yeah, that was crazy.
That's pretty
Just
cool.
awesome, dude.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, and then like countless times just in the clubhouse, just traveling on the road with the guys. But you know, Mike Bordick playing 1,600 games, like just.
There's a lot of special things that happen on those baseball fields and traveling. And what's any hard lessons? If I asked you hardest lesson, what would you say?
Yeah, I think the toll that takes on your family, you know, and if you're not aware of that and you don't actively keep that in check and making the most important people in your life feel like they're the most important, is definitely going to come back to haunt you.
Powerful stuff. Well, we're 30 minutes in, so I think we're going to wrap. Thank you for coming into the WLNZ studios. Look forward to hanging out with you for the next couple days. Thank you for being part of the show, Jeff.
Thank you.
Make winning in life your habit, not your goal. Excellence isn't an outcome. It's a daily standard. My mission is to build athletes and teams that compete at the highest level, not just on game day, but in every aspect of their journey. Build the right habits, lead with intent, and push yourself beyond the limits others set for you. And don't forget to cherish the small moments. They pass by in a blink of an eye. Until next time, keep stacking bricks and go Stars. Coach Cut's Corner is recorded live in the WLNZ studios. Engineering and production assistance are provided by Dedalian Lowry. Thanks for listening. And if you enjoyed today's podcast, please share it and follow us on all the platforms of social media. You can find more about our program at lccstars.com, and donations to our baseball program can be made at the same site. See you next time.